Hello, everyone. I'm Matt Burke, Senior Associate Commissioner for America East Conference, and welcome to this episode of the Three Pillars Academy. Today, we're talking about climbing the administrative ladder with two people who have recently been promoted from the administrative ranks to athletic director at their schools. Welcome to Peter Casey from UMass Lowell and Jeff Schulman from the University of Vermont.
Thanks,
Thank
Matt.
you. Thank you, Matt.
Start with both of you. We talk a lot of times in the coaching circles that you move 18 inches on the bench and you ask what changes, and they say everything. You guys moved down an office, perhaps, from your administrative role as the number 2 on campus to the athletic director. So what changed for you? Start with you, Peter.
Well, as far as the office is concerned, that didn't change. I stayed in the same office, so I didn't get any perk there, which is fine. I think the biggest difference for me that I think I underestimated was the fundraising element and what it takes to build from the ground up. And it's something that we've had to do collectively over the last couple years, but I did a little bit of everything. But knowing to be successful at this level, the fundraising has taken a lot of time, justifiably so, but I think I underestimated that, and I think that's the biggest thing for me in the first 8-9 months. It hasn't even been a year yet, so.
Same question for you, Jeff.
Like Peter, I kept my same office. I did move some furniture around a little bit, which changed the feel. But yeah, it's definitely been a transition, and there's lots that's different. But you know, obviously the institution is the same, and many of the relationships are the same. I certainly feel a heightened sense of responsibility for our student athletes and for the department and for our coaches and for the how athletics fits into the broader university landscape. I certainly spend more time in our main administration building. I had to get a different parking permit because I'm over either with general counsel or obviously in the president's office. But it's been I've really enjoyed it. Probably even more so than I expected. I think sometimes in a deputy or senior associate role, you sort of wonder what's next, and am I going to enjoy it? It's certainly the next step on the administrative ladder, but you don't really know if it's going to be as fun. And it really has been a fun transition for me. I'm certainly enjoying what I'm doing.
Unlike coming into a different school where maybe your staff is already in place, one of the first things you have to do is replace yourself and all the work perhaps that you were doing. How did you approach replacing Jeff Schulman, the deputy, if you will?
I sort of did a pretty significant reorganization of our administrative team and promoted some folks into new roles. Did hire one new senior staff member, Ed Hockenberry. But that, the sort of the division of my responsibilities has occurred as part of that transition, and people talk all the time about sort of getting the right people on the bus, and I couldn't feel better about my administrative team. I just feel incredibly fortunate to have such competent people and people who I really enjoy working with and who serve our student athletes and the university so well.
Same question for you, Peter.
For me, it was a little bit different because you always wonder about the transition, if it's going to happen, and if it does, when it's going to happen. For me, it happened pretty abruptly in September before, as the season had already started. So the timing wasn't optimal, but I don't think any timing is ever optimal when you make a big change like this. So for me, the approach was a little bit different with the staff, just sitting the staff down. There's a comfort level because you've worked with each other for so long, but just emphasizing to do the job that's in front of you. The focus has always been the student athletes. So for me, this past year has just looking at it through a different lens. And now with the off-season, having an off-season retreat coming in the next couple weeks, we're going to kind of readjust things. And the biggest difficulty for me was trying to relinquish some responsibilities and delegating, and my staff will be the first to tell you that's really difficult for me. But as Jeff alluded to, our staff is wonderful. Delegated on the run, and it's worked out seamlessly. So we're really excited about that.
You both replaced people, in your case Dana Skinner, in your case Bob Horn, who I have a tremendous amount of respect for. I know you do too. They're mentors, they're friends. you go in and it's only natural that you're going to do things a little bit differently. But how do you respect the jobs that they did while also putting your own stamp on your department?
It's a really good question. And the first staff meeting I had, it was a day after the announcement that Dana was retiring, and I pulled everyone in the room and told them that it's evidently clear I am not Dana. I can't be Dana. Those are huge shoes to fill. However, we will build on that legacy in which he started. We're going to finish that. But just like anything else, you want to put your own spin on it. We're different personalities. We approach things differently. We always ended up in the same spot, but different ways how we got there. So for me, a lot of stuff did not change from that respect, but I think the manner in which you go about things, and sometimes more often than not, the decision may be different, but in the end, the process is fairly similar to what you've done in the past.
And for you, Jeff, not only Bob Corin, but Rick Farnham, who's still around, and Denny Lambert, people who have stayed in Vermont. Same thing for you.
Yeah, I mean, it's it's a big part of why I feel so much responsibility and so honored to be in the role that I'm in. Is just because I have so much respect for the people that have gone before me in the athletic director role, starting with Denny and Rick and Bob, and all of them have been mentors to me in different ways. And but the message really from all of them has been pretty consistent, which is that in this role you have to be yourself. You have to be authentic to who you are, or else it's just not gonna be right. And I'm different than all of them, and certainly, I've taken and learned so much from each of them in different ways. But I'm also comfortable and confident in knowing that ultimately I need to lead in a way that's authentic to me.
Other than Bob and Rick and Denny and those people we talked about, who are some of the other mentors that have helped shape who Jeff Schulman is and your position as athletic director?
Yeah, I mean, those are administratively, those are certainly people that have been really key to my my administrative career. But I think back to my first job as out of college was as an intern at the ECAC, and Clayton Chapman was the commissioner there. He was just an incredible person, warm, and just a great professional. So I've learned a lot from him over the years, and just my colleagues, Peter, and people that I'm close with in our league in America East and in our hockey league, Hockey East. We talk a lot more than probably people think, and there's a lot of, we give each other support and we talk through challenging things, and there's nothing quite like talking to somebody who's in the same position and who's dealing with so many of the same things to really to help guide me.
Who are some of the people other than Dana who've shaped you?
Yeah, it's a great question. Outside of mom and dad, right? Obviously, growing up in a military family, watching from afar, instilling that hard work and dedication, the value of being a first-generation college student was key. But much like Jeff, along the way, whether it was other administrators, other co-workers, more often than not, too, outside of the things you like, you also learn the things that maybe perhaps may not suit you as a particular person, and that's something that I've always valued, whether it's an internship. I often tell the student athletes now, internships are great. More often than not, you're going to learn what you don't want to do when you're in this seat as opposed to what you want to do. Certainly that's part of the process, but make sure you weigh both of them.
You mentioned the internship, Jeff. You mentioned Bushnell intern way back when you got started. What advice would you give that person, maybe a former student athlete, someone young in college athletics, just getting into the business? What advice would you give them?
I have a lot of these conversations, as I'm sure Peter does. I'm always really supportive of people who want to do this kind of work. I mean, I've just, to be able to combine your passion, and I like to talk about combining your avocation with your vocation. It's really something special, and I think both of us feel really privileged to be in college athletics. So I'm certainly supportive. I also talk to them about the realities that you have to work. It's long hours, and oftentimes for very little pay, particularly at the start. And sometimes coming out of college, you feel like, all right, it's time for me to get a quote real job, but really the first job needs to be an internship, and then maybe a grad assistantship, and then maybe something that's part-time, or you're getting paid part-time for full-time plus work. it takes some persistence and resilience, and that's usually the advice I give. But the overarching message is it's an amazing career, an amazing field to work in, and feel really lucky.
So I take Jeff's advice, I move up the ladder a little bit, and now I think I'm ready to be an AD. What advice do you give that person, Peter, who maybe thinks they're ready to be an AD, or perhaps is ready to be the next, take that next step?
Yeah, look, I don't think you're ever ready. I don't think there's a day like I'm ready, right? But you're surprised when it actually happens, and then you realize all the hard work and dedication that goes into that before that. My advice would be, I know this is really difficult in this day and age, is never underestimate the power of a pen and a piece of paper. Picking up and writing a note, thank you note, and most importantly, networking. Jeff alluded to it, just using colleagues as resources. Everyone texts, everyone emails, set yourself apart. Write a handwritten note, don't type it. Some people probably might want to type it because the penmanship isn't nearly as good as most others, but just understanding the value of networking and trying to separate yourself in some form or fashion.
You're both former student athletes. How do you think that affects your approach, or does it affect your approach to, how you deal with some of these issues on campus where you're so often dealing with student athletes? Jeff, we'll start with you.
It feels like a long time ago that I was I was a student athlete, but I do think on some level, particularly having been a student athlete at the school that I'm now working at, there's obviously a special feeling of connection to our student athletes, and again, a feeling of responsibility that I think all of us who are athletic directors feel to the institution and to our coaches and to our student athletes. But obviously Vermont's a place that I grew up in many ways, and so the experience that I had as a student athlete was so powerful and so meaningful and so challenging that I think often about it in terms of what we're trying to provide for our current students.
Same question, Peter.
Yeah, I like to think being a college student athlete helps, and also being a former coach, I think that also helps, where you can see their perspective. But I also think it's really important to get out behind the desk, visit people in their office, visit the student athletes at practice, to make sure you get that connection, to fill in that gap between when we graduated and where they're at right now, to try to stay hip, as my kids would say. Or lit, as they would say. So I think it's really important to communicate that way, but I think it really helps that they understand that you've been in their shoes in some form or fashion.
A lot of sports under the America East umbrella. You also have some under Hockey East, as we talked about. Skiing, other sports were certainly having great success. But men's basketball in particular in this league, something Vermont has really created a culture and a brand around that. How much pride do you take in the job that Tom Brennan started and John Becker has continued on at the University of Vermont?
Yeah, obviously we're incredibly proud of our men's basketball program, and it's a model for us in so many ways. Obviously the competitive success stands out. The NCAA tournament appearances, the couple wins that we've had in the NCAA tournament, but probably as much as anything, it's the quality of the people, the coaches, and most importantly our student athletes. They're not only exceptionally talented athletes, but they're good students and they're good citizens and they're leaders in our department and on campus. And that's what all of us are striving for. And we have benefited from incredible community support. We're the State University of Vermont. It means a lot to us to represent the state of Vermont. We're the only Division I school in Vermont. So it's been incredible, and as people are probably aware, we have a new facility that's coming that's it's going to touch all aspects of our department, but basketball is obviously front and center, and was a big part in helping us get it done.
As a relative newcomer to Division I, and with a new coach in men's basketball, relatively new coach in men's basketball, how do you approach this, and what are the things you're trying to do to catch Vermont?
Sure. I mean, being the new kid on the block is an interesting perspective, but it's good to have such a great conference with UVM at the head of it the last couple of years, in Stony Brook, and using them as an aspiration. But we've also taken a page or two out of our hockey yearbook there, and having the success we've had with them over the last 6 to 8 years, and try to mirror that with men's and women's basketball, but also with all our other sports, and trying to continue to get to the top of that league.
You mentioned it's only been 8 or 9 months. Biggest accomplishments, an All-American just this week. What are the biggest accomplishments for you so far?
Wow. A lot, but not any single one. But just coming off of commencement, seeing young ladies like Noelle Lambert turning tragedy into triumph, Bree Rudolph, who's been through 2 ACLs and some off the field challenges, and graduating, going on to get her master's, and is currently at the police academy. Those are things, I think that's why we all do it. Those are probably, that's not just me, but it's a collective effort. Singularly, I think maybe perhaps the first championship with cross country right out of the gate. They made it look real easy. But it's easy when you have a coach like Gary Gardner and a student athlete like Paul Hogan. But there have been a lot of victories along the way, but that's just a product of having great student athlete, great coaches, and a great staff.
And say for you, Jeff, I know the facility has been talked about for some time, so I'm sure that's certainly front and center. But in addition to that, what else are key accomplishments so far in your short tenure?
Yeah, obviously, the facility has been a big focus of mine since I became athletic director, and I'm just so happy for our student athletes and the community and our coaches to, finally having broken ground now on a project that we've been working on for many, many years. But we've also, to be very specific, we've had a lot of success and invested significantly in the mental health area. We now have 2 full-time mental health professionals working in the athletic department as part of what we call Catamount Sports Psychology and Counseling. And I think all of us who work in this field, and America East has been a great leader as a conference in this area, and it's really important. It's really important, and it's something that we have to address, and it's a big part of our responsibility to support our student athletes. So something that I'm proud of that our department has accomplished.
You mentioned now maybe feeling like or telling people you're not going to be Dana, and you're following Bob and Rick, and now that it's been, you're approaching a year or getting past the first year, and you start settling in, and maybe it feels more comfortable. Now, what are the next things to accomplish, I guess, starting with you, Peter, I guess?
Yeah, Jeff alluded to it. With the ever-changing landscape of the NCAA, we mentioned mental health, the refueling station, the facilities, some mid to long-term goals where we have a really good foundation throughout the last 6 years of the transition. We've addressed a lot of that, but the facilities and the fundraising aspect, and getting a good budget to great with some fundraising activity and stuff like that. So I think that's really important. That's really been a priority for us, and it will be continuing.
And what's next at UVM?
Yeah, I think in these roles we're always trying to project out, 5, 10, 15, 20 years down the road, and what is college athletics going to look like? What's higher education going to look like? And it can be challenging. So I think it's, we're constantly trying to evaluate that and sort of marry the realities of the landscape and the changing landscape of college athletics with the realities on our campus and what our priorities are. Resources are always a challenge and a focus of any athletic director. So certainly making sure that we are able to support our student athletes and our coaches, and make sure that we're administering a program that the university and the entire state of Vermont can be proud of is a major focus.
Well, from a conference perspective, certainly we rely so heavily on the direction of the athletic directors, the presidents, and certainly incredibly happy to have UMass Lowell and Vermont as members, and have the two of you, while not new to the team, playing new roles, and just happy to have both Peter Casey and Jeff Schulman with us today on the Three Pillars Academy episode. Thank you.
Thank you.